What happens when you cross a criminal with the dark arts? And then we take a look at the story of two young girls out shopping one day. They were hoping to buy some treats, a couple sodas, and have a nice little snack before dinner. Little did they know they were about to come face to face with a terrifying vision of the damned. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing, staying cool, staying calm. I know politics season is starting. A lot of people are starting to get their cages rattled. I love politics. Politics are my sport. It's my football, it's my NASCAR, it's my WWE. I love politics. I can't wait for the debate. I got my bean dip. I basically do. I treat it like the Super Bowl. I love all this stuff. So I can't wait. But someone who loves politics even more than me, someone who should be president in themselves, walking into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for Dave Baxter. Woohoo, yeah, wee, ha-ha, yay, woohoo. He's walking on in with his armed Secret Service guards, walking on in a Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Dave, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support this show financially through the Patreon or the merch store or anything like that, I totally understand. I really, really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. I gotta be honest, Dave might have already gotten his shout out. I'm not entirely for sure. My record keeping has been a bit sloppy this season. So if Dave's like, what am I doing here? I got a shout out a couple weeks ago. I apologize for that. I'd rather err on the side of caution. But if not, this is your first time in a Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Dave, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to toss you... I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the Dead Rabbit Dirigible. We're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Command. Why don't you fly us all the way out to India? Nice leisurely drive, or flight in this case. We're headed all the way out to India. I know that's a pretty big place. Don't have a lot of specifics as far as this location goes, but we're headed out to India. We're about to meet this young man. Let's call him Bruce. Bruce lives with his mother and his father. They live together in this house, and they seem to be pretty well off. Not the richest people in town, but they do have a maid. So I think that automatically puts you kind of in the upper crust of any society you're in. I don't think it's like a live-in maid, like a Downton Abbey type thing. Probably just comes by from time to time. I think it'd be dope. I've always thought about hiring someone to come and clean my house. But I would not want a butler. That would make me feel really, really bad. Because it's like one thing to like, this lady comes over and I was like, hey, can you like clean my kitchen? She's all being attacked by ants. She's like, ah, and I was like, more food from my roommates, the ants. Call another maid tomorrow. It's one thing to have someone come over and kind of pick up after you. Right? I'll be like, don't dust. That's a conspiracy. I don't think people should dust. Don't stop. So I'm telling the maid, no, don't dust. She's all has a gas mask on. She's like, so dusty in here. Don't dust. It's a useless activity. Have someone come over and kind of like clean your toilet, clean your kitchen, clean stuff up off the ground, vacuum. But I would hate to be sitting there. I've thought about this. I put a lot of thought into this. I'd hate to be sitting there and having some dude standing next to me the whole time. And he's like, Master Carpenter, would you like this pillow? And I was like, no, I'm cool, bro. And he's like, oh, okay. He's holding the pillow all day long. He's like, oh man, I really hope he asked for this pillow because I've been holding it for the last 8 hours. Master Carpenter, there's somebody at the door. Would you like me to get it? I mean, yeah, I guess. I'm already being rude to my imaginary butler. It would be so annoying to have this dude standing there going, Master Carpenter, can I take your multiple empty Diet Pepsi cans? He's stepping on all this garbage. He's like, oh, the maid hasn't shown up yet, Master Carpenter. I see the floor is covered in empty soda cans. Yeah. I would feel really bad if this dude was standing next to me. I'm also one of those guys, I kind of like to do stuff for myself. I'll ask for help. I'll be like, hey man, can you hand me that stapler? And then I'll go, nah, never mind. And then I reach over and I grab the stapler myself. I didn't know that I did that. One of my employees, back when I worked at Best Buy 30 years ago, one of my employees, she goes, why do you always do that? And I was like, do what? She goes, you always ask for something, and then you go, never mind, and you get it yourself. I still do it to this day. I don't like people having to help me, especially with minor things. Yeah, I can answer the door myself, bro. I couldn't just deal with a dude around me all the time asking to do stuff. I can get my own pillow, and I don't want a pillow. He's all sad. He's like, oh, I made you this pillow, Master Carpenter. It's a picture of us, and a picture of the maid being devoured by ants. I could do a maid, though. I could have a maid swing by every once in a while. Anyways, Bruce lives in a house with his mom, his dad, and this maid who stops by from time to time. Well, on this particular day, there's a knock on the door. Bruce is like, where's my butler? Oh, no, where'd my butler go? No butler, so Bruce has to get up and answer the door himself. And when he opens the door, he sees standing outside a priest. And the priest goes, oh, good young man I see right there in front of me. I am nothing but a lowly priest asking for money. Would you like to make a contribution, please, sir? And Bruce says this is actually a really common scam in India, or at least where he lives. You have these priests come to your door and ask for money. It's a scam, right? There's only so many priests. He's like, dude, you're the 10th priest to come this hour. So many priests in town. He goes, it's common these people show up and they ask for money. So he totally is like blowing him off. He knows this is a scam. He's not going to give him any money. Guy's probably not even a real priest. So Bruce is like, no, I don't want to give you no money. And the priest is like, are you sure, sir? Are you sure? Bruce is like, huh? Why'd you say it all weird like that? The priest says, your father will die in July. And this really rattles Bruce. Because Bruce knows that his father is very unwell. His father is in general ill health. Plus, he has I don't know if this is an odd combination. For all I know, this is pretty common. I hope not. But because if so, then I got to hop on that treadmill again. His father's very ill. His father also is obese and schizophrenic. So I don't know. Is there a combination? I mean, like, I've always thought schizophrenic people were kind of thin. Every time I've seen a schizophrenic person, like in a movie, not like, obviously it was like, oh, all schizophrenics look like Brad Pitt. Oh, they have everything so good. No, obviously, I know not those movies. Documentaries and interviews and news clips and YouTube videos. I've never seen an obese schizophrenic person before. An odd combination. Maybe there is something behind that. Maybe there is something behind being schizophrenic and not, being 500 pounds, 300 pounds. Okay, I'm obese, I'm 300 pounds. But anyways, the point is that I have to classify myself in that. His father's obese, schizophrenic, and on top of that, just in general, ill health. And this priest is saying, Bruce, your dad's going to die in July. The priest goes on to say, I'm going to be honest with you, son. I went to one of your neighbor's house, and I told them, a couple months ago, I told them that their father was going to die. And they kicked me out. They said, get out of here, bum. Get out of here, you old priest. Just scamming for money. They kicked me out. And you know what happened? You know what happened, boy? Their dad died. And Bruce knows exactly who he's talking about. Sure enough, Bruce remembers not too long ago, one of his neighbors, their father died. So he's starting to think, do you err on the side of caution, right? You know this is a scam, but maybe kick down like $5-10, whatever. If it means that your father survives, I'm sure you can dig in your couch for a couple coins. And Bruce is thinking this is a scam, but what if I'm wrong? And almost as if the priest could tell his hesitation, the priest pulls out this length of thread, and he said, take this, young man. Take this thread and go to where your father is right now, and make a circle around him 3 times with this thread. After you've done that. If you measure the thread, it'll be longer than it is right now. This is actual magic. This is not a trick. There's no David Copperfield to be had here. He'll be able to do it. So Bruce takes the thread and he goes and he finds his dad. Luckily, his dad is sleeping. Because if he's out there, he's like building a deck. And Dad's all walking around the backyard. He's like, Dad, come here. I just want to walk around you 3 times with this thread. Luckily, his father's sleeping. Unluckily, his dad is obese, so you might have needed, he's like, asked the priest, he's like, do you have a bigger string? Because my dad's pretty big. Bruce takes the string, and he walks to where his dad's sleeping, and he makes 3 revolutions around his father. Okay, and then Bruce brings the string back to the priest, and he goes, Priest, you said that the string would be longer. Actually, now it's shorter. And that's when the priest says, that's what I meant. Someone telling the story on a podcast didn't pay attention to his notes. If I give you the string and you walk around your father 3 times, the string will be shorter than it was before, not longer. And Bruce is like, okay, well, either way, it happened, right? Whatever the magic was, it did happen. The string got shorter, not longer. And the priest, at this point, goes, you know what's funny? That could be a common magic trick. That could be an illusion of some sort, but I've never heard of that before. Neither did Bruce. Bruce was pretty impressed by this. At this point, the priest says, this is what you need to do. You need to give me some money, and you need to perform these rituals. At this point, Bruce's mother gets involved in this mix, and she's also talking to this priest. And the priest says, first off, I need 1,200 Indian rupees, which is $25 in U.S. currency. So again, not a lot of money for your dad's life. And then the priest says, I need you guys to make this little pile of flour. Make this kind of like muddy, thick flour for me. What you need is you need some water, some whole wheat flour, which is called like atta, I think, over there. Then some soda. And you pour it all together, and the mother does this, and the flour turned red. And she's like, oh my God. Apparently that's not supposed to happen. I don't think I've ever even owned a bag of flour, let alone opened one and used it outside of a science experiment in 5th grade. Apparently it's not supposed to turn red. And the priest is drinking a Mountain Dew Code Red. He's all, well, let me have the rest of that soda. Glug, 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 glug. Ta-da, it's gone. Magic. He goes, you see how that's turned red? This is serious, guys. We have to save your dad's life. Now, we'll make a voodoo doll type figurine. That's how Bruce described it. Bruce described it because he posted this online fairly recently. This story will keep developing, you'll see. But he used the term voodoo doll. I know that's more of a completely different region of the world. But he says, we formed this flour basically into a voodoo doll, an effigy of a human, possibly the father himself. Bruce wasn't specific. And the priest goes, okay, we need to have something personal, something that means a lot to this family. Ma'am, that ring on your finger right there, take that ring off, ma'am. And she takes it off, and they put it in the pile of flour that's now in the shape of a human. They place it inside of the head. So it's kind of buried in this flour. It's like, just imagine a gingerbread man. Well, anyways, the priest says, now we got to take this flour man. We got to take the gingerbread man, gets up and starts running away. Well, it's kind of close to what's about to happen. The priest says, okay, now all 3 of us, we have to take this flour man with the ring in his head down to the graveyard where we will bury it. And after we bury it, you 2 need to go back home, but you can't look back. You can't look back at me digging it back up and running away with it. I am the gingerbread man. And they do this. They take this voodoo doll made out of flour down to the graveyard, and they bury it, and then Bruce and his mother walk back to the house. And Bruce said it wasn't long. Like, as we were walking back to the house, we both realized what the scam was. Sure, he got $25, and it does sound like they had a pretty active afternoon. There's a lot of tricks going on. string getting shorter, baking, all this stuff. But also, in essence, he stole the ring. He stole the ring, which Bruce estimated in value of about $1,000 US currency. He goes, as we were walking back to the house, we go, oh man, this guy got us. Like, this was all a trick. We took the ring. We gave him the $25. We thought that was it, but that was just an extra bonus for him. He took the ring. So, a scam. 100% a scam. If that was the end of the story, it would be the story of someone just getting hoodwinked. But that's not the end of the story. That happened back in March 2023. By September 2023, Bruce would be sitting in his house, because Bruce says, I never leave the house. He goes, it's very rare. Every so often I have to bury a voodoo doll, and then I'll get a little bit of sunlight. He goes, most of the time I'm at home, and when I'm at home, most of the time I'm in my bedroom. I'm just kind of hanging out there. And he hears his mom going like, oh, where did it go? Oh, man. Oh, go. Bruce, can you help me? Can you help me? And he's like, what? What's going on, Mom? And she's like, I can't find that $20 in Indian money. I can't find my rupees. I can't find my Indian rupees laying around here. I know I left at least $20 worth. Where did it go? And Bruce is like, I don't know, Mom. Did you, like, put it in your pocket? I don't have pockets. I have women clothing. He's like, oh, yeah. And then they're, like, looking around, and they can never find it. And this $20 just goes missing. And a couple weeks later, hey, Bruce. What? Mom, what is it now? Oh, I just had $50 go missing. I had it in my wallet, and it's gone. Can't find it anywhere. Can you help me look for it? He's like, yeah, I'll help you look for it. Did you check your pockets? She's like, I wear women's clothing. They don't put pockets in women's clothing. That's one of the weirdest quirks of fashion, that women don't have pockets in their clothes. But anyways, that's not what the story's about. The story's about missing money. Bruce says that starting back in September of 2023, money would go missing around the house, and it would never be found again. A couple bills here, a couple bills there. It was definitely noticeable amounts, though. And he said sometimes it would go missing even in his own room. He'd have money in his room, and it would vanish. And he goes, I don't understand that, because I'm in my room all the time. How would it leave? Of course, at this point, you go, well, you do have a maid, don't you? And he goes, yeah, it's not the maid. I honestly don't think the maid is stealing from us. I think something else is going on here. I can't find where any of my money is. He's walking around in a brand new fur coat. She's like, oh, look what I got. This is my new uniform. I'm supposed to be dressed as a fox as I clean up. Money keeps missing. He goes, it gets to a point where every other day they're finding money missing from the house. At a certain point, I would probably just not use cash. Just use debit card. But all this money's gone. This really came to a head back in May 2024. This is when Bruce posted this online underneath the name Completion Enjoyer. He said it was May 2024. He hears his mother screaming, ah, Bruce, ah! And Bruce is like, what in the world's going on? And he goes to check on his mother, and his mom is just his dad's still alive, by the way. He's just been sleeping in the chair this whole time. Whatever this ritual was, did not, at least save the life of his dad, but his dad might not have been about to die anyways. But his dad also might have not been about to die anyways. The father is still alive, but dad finally wakes up. He's like, oh, what's going on? Bruce is there, and they're like, Mom, what's going on? And all of her ancestral jewelry is the term he used. The jewelry that was handed down on her side of the family, she got it from her mother. All of these rings and earrings and necklaces and all of this stuff, it's all gone. She had it all in this little, like, hutch. And everything but the fake stuff vanished. He said the total losses, and I don't know if this also includes all the money that went missing here and there, or if this is just the jewelry. He said overall we lost about $12,000. He goes, we don't have a lot of money. We do have a maid, but I mean, it's not like we're super well off. Losing $12,000 is a huge blow, but he said also it's my mom's family jewelry. It's all gone, and she's inconsolable. She's just freaking out. She's so sad that this is all gone. He believes this is related to the priest. He believes this is because the priest is using black magic against the family. He posted it online underneath the title Black Magic is Real. Need serious help. It kind of straddles two things, right? It could be, listen, from a skeptic's viewpoint, out of all the stuff we've covered on the show, this could be the story you go, Jason, this has the most logical explanation. It's the maid stealing all of this stuff. That's the most obvious answer. The maid is stealing this money. She has access to the house. She's constantly walking around, cleaning stuff up. This is a story that you could say that's probably the most logical answer, but let's take Bruce at his word. Because we don't know, really, the maid or any of the situation. He could know, and he could be right that it's 100% not the maid. It's very interesting because we do see a cultural divide in these types of stories. In the West, especially like in the United States, in most of it, I mean, unless you're like in New Orleans or something like that, the idea of magic having any real interaction in your daily lives is laughed at. Outside of a religious miracle, outside of astrology, I mean, we definitely have our carve-outs, right? People go, what? Ghost, that's ridiculous. Let me check my star chart to see how my day's going to be. But in other cultures, we've covered a story a while back. I'll have to try to find out where it was. I actually think it took place in Europe, maybe in the United Kingdom, but the family was Arabic, I believe, or Persian. And they were having money just appear randomly around the house. And it was cursed. The money was cursed. Also, I might actually be confusing two separate stories. But we do see a lot of stories in Muslim cultures involving money appearing. And that's a sign that there's actually something trying to tempt you in your own house. That's not your money. Something's manifesting this money. And here we have the opposite. We have some force, Bruce believes, that's taking money from them. It's super interesting because I think there is, like, it's easy for me to go, well, you know, I live in the Pacific Northwest. There's obviously not a magician breaking into your house stealing money. To me, as awesome as that would be, I think that would be great. Not me, somebody else, but if those stories are real, I think they'd be awesome. But, and like he goes, this happens all the time. Even the priest just knocking on the door trying to scam people. That's just part of living in his part of the country. In another country. So the idea of using black magic to actually rob people, it sounds very alien, I think, to most of the world. But I do believe, because I do believe in that there are true elements of magic. I think a lot of it is either law of attraction or just made up phoniness, scamming. But I do believe that there's enough possibilities to use extraordinary powers to rob, to steal. A long time ago, we did that story, what was it called? The Hand of Fate. I'll put it in the show notes, but there used to be this old relic that if you took the hand of a murderer, like, who's on the gallows, you don't want to take it from him while he's still alive, he's going to murder you. They would rip these hands off of criminals who were dead, and they would turn them into this powerful magical artifact that allowed them to break into any house, would make all the occupants fall asleep, and they would have to carry around this rotting human hand. Like, I kind of wish stuff like that was real. I mean, not saying I want to be a burglar, but it adds so much more whimsy and magic to the world. That's one thing I like about all these stories. I believe, most of them, or believe that most of them could happen. But it's hard, again, like that, it almost seems like a bridge too far for me, honestly, that a priest could do this. I think the first part of the story is 100% true. The priest stole the ring. He ran that scam and stole the ring. That's something that anyone could do with enough, charisma. The idea of him magically now interacting with his household. I mean, again, like, once you've invited this type of negative energy into your house, this stuff would be more likely to happen than if he had just kicked out the priest in the first place. However, had he kicked out the priest and his father died in July, Bruce would have always wondered if he could have saved his own father's life. So interesting story. Again, I think there's that thing where I go, well, it's probably the maid. But we don't know. We don't know. It probably is the maid, to be fair. But again, I think there's a cultural difference with stories like this. And it very well could be black magic that's robbing this family blind. And the big problem with that is you can get rid of the maid. If it's the maid, that's a very easy problem to fix. If it's some sort of spiritual attack, that can be a lot harder to take care of. But Bruce, I hope you guys get this figured out. I do hope you guys get this figured out one way or the other and are able to stop this and bring that thief to justice. Dave, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind India. Why don't you fly us all the way out to the Midwest? Headed all the way out to the American Midwest. The year is 2018. We got to give a shout out to the last 747. The last 747 has been sending me over a ton of stuff. I really, really appreciate these stories. It's 2018. We're about to meet these two young girls. They're sisters. We don't have their real names. We'll call one Michelle. She's the narrator of this story. Michelle, she's 16 years old, and then her sister, we'll call her Laura, is 14. Michelle and Laura, they attend a local Catholic school. And after school, these two girls, they go to their grandma's house to help take care of her barn cats. Meow. Meow. These big old furry cats walking around the barn. Hissing at the goats. Sitting up in the rafters. Barn cats. Well, anyways, Michelle and Laura, when they get out of school, they would then go to their grandma's house to take care of the barn cats. On the way out there, they'd stop by this little grocery store, and without their parents knowing, they would buy some sodas and some Little Debbie snack cakes. Yum, 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 yum. Eat them up. She says we would throw the stuff away in this big barrel in the barn, so no one would ever know that we were doing this. They come home, they all have diabetes. They're like, well, that's weird, kids. You didn't have diabetes when you went to school. How'd you get diabetes? On this particular day, they're at the store, and Laura is standing in one aisle, and Michelle wants to go check something out, so she actually ends up walking around the corner down this other aisle. And Michelle says, I have a really bad issue with social anxiety. So she's walking through the store. She goes, I'm really kind of just looking at the ground because I don't want anyone to see my eyes. I don't want to look in anyone's eyes. I just have social anxiety. Oh. Michelle's walking around and she's looking at the ground, and she gets to the end of the aisle and she looks down and she sees these dirty, worn down work boots, these brown work boots. They're on somebody, right? It's not like she's all tripping over them. She's like, she's in the shoe section. Someone left these out. No, she's walking down the aisle and she stops because she knows there's someone in front of them. She sees these brown, dirty work boots. And she starts to, look up. She sees these boots and she goes, everything's moving in slow motion at this point. But something compels her to look up. And she goes, I'm looking at the shoes, and I start to look up, and I see that the guy is wearing worn old jeans. Worn, dirty jeans. She goes, this is pretty typical for this side of town. People dress like this, right? They're just got off work or they're going to work. These are their work clothes. She goes, I see these worn jeans, and as I'm looking up even more, I get to his hands, and they're swollen. Both of his hands are swollen. They're bulbous, is the word she used. They look puffy. They look swollen. They looked wet. She said these swollen hands looked wet and slick. The skin was pale. She said it looked like the hands of a dead man. She keeps looking up. She sees that this man is wearing a button-down red flannel shirt. Just a button-down red flannel shirt. She keeps looking up and she gets to his face. She stares into the infinite black void of its mouth as the flesh of this man's face begin to melt off of its skull. She immediately looked back down and turned around and started walking away. She goes, I didn't run. She said, I felt if I ran, it would get me. I just turned around and walked away. She said, for just a split second, as she's walking, she's playing this back in her head. She's playing back the image of what she had just seen, this bloated, rotting corpse of a man standing there in the grocery store. She said, I only looked at his face for a half a second. I saw that mouth, that endless void where a human mouth should be. I watched the flesh drip off of his face. And in that split second where I looked directly at him, she says his eyes were also just sockets full of black nothingness. She's walking down the aisle. She's not running. And she gets to the corner and she turns and there's her sister there. Michelle goes, Laura, you gotta see something. You gotta come with me. And Laura's like, what? What are you talking about? I'm just trying to sit here and figure out which Little Debbie cake I want. Laura, come on, I have to show you something. Partially because Michelle needs to know that she's not losing her mind. If she does not have another witness see this, she'll forever wonder if what she saw was what was really there. Laura, on the other hand, thinks Michelle must have just seen a cute boy and is trying to get her to come around the corner to check out this cute boy that Michelle just saw. Michelle finally convinces Laura to come with her. They turn the corner of the aisle so Michelle can show Laura what she saw. Or maybe there's just a normal man there. Or maybe nothing at all. They turn the aisle and Michelle looks and she sees the melting man still standing there, down at the other end of the aisle. They turn the corner. Michelle, sure enough, sees the melting man still standing there at the opposite end of the aisle. Laura looks and she freezes in place. If Michelle needed any confirmation that something was wrong, this was it. Her sister just freezes there, and Michelle goes, Laura. She's frozen. She's completely petrified as to what she is seeing at the end of this aisle, to the point where Michelle has to grab Laura's arm and yank her to snap her out of it, and at that point they both run to the opposite side of the store. What did you see, Laura? What did you see at the end of that aisle? Laura says, I saw a man. There was something wrong with his face, something wrong with his whole body. He looked like a dead man. And Michelle says that, yeah, it's not just that he looked like this, but there was something about his energy. She said his essence was, quote, foul and rotten, unquote. Because when she posted this online, a lot of people are saying maybe you saw a burn victim. Maybe you saw someone who was in a horrible car accident. Maybe you saw someone this. And Michelle's like, listen, there could be a lot of reasonable explanations for it. Those aren't it. It wasn't a burn victim. It wasn't someone who just walked in and happened to be like a rotting corpse. Look like a rotting corpse, but not be one. She said just the energy around this thing. There was something so dark and so wrong. Just being in its presence, you felt like you were just going to be devoured, if not physically, spiritually. And they talked about this. They discussed it. They're trying to figure it out. One thing that Michelle and Laura started to realize was nobody else in the store seemed to be reacting to this. They saw their customers walking around, employees, what have you. It was only Laura and Michelle who seemed to see this thing. This facsimile of a human, a ghost, maybe, a demon, something worse. Michelle says, you know what we should do is let's go ask the manager if we can see the security cameras. We can see the footage. Maybe this guy walked in at a certain point. You see him get out of his melt mobile in the car. He's eating a patty melt at the diner next door. And Laura goes, Michelle, they're not going to show us. If no one else is reacting to this monster man in the store, they're definitely not going to show us videotape of an aisle. In fact, no one's going to believe us if we tell this story. Because it sounds insane. Michelle agrees, and they end up leaving. Later that night, after Michelle and Laura have fallen asleep back at their house, Laura wakes up in the middle of the night. The melted man is standing in her bedroom doorway, just watching her. Michelle said she closed her eyes and just pretended like he wasn't there. Forced herself to remain still, remain silent, not to scream. And she laid there until the sun came up. Neither of them ever saw the melted man after this point. You know, the story starts off in 2018. And Michelle, which is very interesting, she said, I think that was my sister having a nightmare. She goes, that might have been sleep paralysis, that might have been a nightmare, but she goes, I don't actually think the melted man came to our house. Which is, you know, obviously you saw something traumatic, you saw this spirit or this demon or what have you, you're probably going to have nightmares, right? You're probably going to be worse than watching a spooky movie and having a nightmare. I mean, you're probably going to have nightmares. It's very interesting that Michelle doesn't think the melted man actually followed them home. She goes, I think it was my sister just having a bad dream. But that's also very reassuring to Michelle, right? Because if Michelle did have to say, maybe the melted man followed us home, she would then have to deal with the fact that this entity knew where they lived and was in their house. It could be very reassuring to not just Laura, but to herself, for Michelle to say, I think he just had a nightmare. I don't think he followed us home. Even though Michelle was the first one to see this, Laura was the one who was the most affected by it. She really had a hard time dealing with what this thing could have been. So much so to the point that she ended up going to her, because, you know, there were students at a Catholic school, she ended up talking to the parish priest about it. And the priest gave a odd answer. I understand that not everyone of a particular religion holds the same viewpoints. I totally understand that. I thought this was an interesting tact for the priest to take, though. The priest dismissed the story. He did not think it was spiritual in any way. He actually thought it was one of the locals wearing a mask. Because he goes, you know, the people on that side of town, they're kind of weird to begin with, Laura. Like, maybe it's just the guy wearing a mask. Michelle is adamant. She goes, it wasn't a mask. She goes, I was watching it melt. It wasn't just a spooky mask. I saw the hands, I saw the head, I saw the face, I saw the void where eyes and a mouth should be. And remember, she saw it from two different vantage points. She saw it when she walked up close to him. And then she turned around and left, got her sister, and then came back and saw it from a distance at this point. So any sort of issues with lighting, tricks of the light with a mask, seeing if it was this scene or if it was that. If she saw it just a single time and took off running, the mask argument would make sense. But she saw it twice from different angles. The priest, again, he might have been just trying to reassure Laura. He said, it's probably just a guy in a mask. I wouldn't worry about it. I found that interesting because a lot of times, when you're in a religious setting, sometimes that does start to become the answer to a lot of things. There's stuff we don't know as well, though. It could be that Laura is constantly having nightmares and hearing scary stories and stuff like that. This could have not been the very first monster she's seen, waking or in dreams. But remember, she's not the one who initially saw this. This was Michelle who showed it to her sister. Michelle posted this online underneath the username BoredBitch011. And what's interesting, I thought the priest thing, I started thinking, what if this is like a local legend? What if this is like a cover-up type of thing? What if the priest knows of this entity, but it's just easier to tell the kids that it's just a man in a mask than to address the fact that there's something dark and evil stalking this community? That's kind of where I was going at. The last 747, and a lot of people online took a different tact to this story. They believe, and before I go into this, I'm not going to talk about it too long, but the last 747 and everyone else who says this, I'm not knocking the opinion of this, but what's interesting is that they talk a lot about the clothing that this man was wearing, specifically the flannel shirt. And a lot of times when a ghost appears wearing flannel, a lot of paranormal researchers say, that's the flannel man. That's the flannel man. Now, I'm not disputing the idea of the flannel man. The flannel man actually originally came to light, as far as I can tell, the very first time it ever appeared in any sort of paranormal research as being called the flannel man was on a podcast called Strange Familiars. I believe it was back in 2017. Their show predates this one. Episode 26 was, they had 2 episodes previous where they kind of mentioned the story about a spirit or a ghost wearing a flannel shirt. Episode 26 was when it really took off. Strange Familiars does a lot of episodes about the flannel man at this point. The flannel man may be its own entity, but I think it's easy to mistake. I think just because a ghost happens to, because those are very popular shirts. Flannel, I do believe that there might actually be an entity known as the Flannel Man, just like there is the Hat Man. He's like a shadow man wearing a hat. But I don't believe that every ghost wearing a flannel shirt is the Flannel Man. Does that make sense? I don't want to get hung up on that. I applaud Strange Familiars' work in putting these stories together because, again, they told it as 1 or 2 off stories, and then people started sending stuff in, and they go, this might actually be a phenomenon. That's awesome. We do that on this show as well with things like The Black Bedroom or Egyptian Darkness. We've started to show that there's actually a phenomenon going on rather than just 1 or 2 events. But I don't think that every spirit that appears wearing flannel, because also that is we're being stereotypical here, but that is a type of clothing that you may wear if you violently die, right? You work in a lumber yard, you're working in a high-risk job in a cold area, you're wearing a flannel shirt. And they're just popular to begin with. It would be the same thing, and I don't want to sound like I'm knocking Strange Familiar or The Last 747 or the hundreds, thousands of other people who believe this, but I think it would be the same thing as if we had the belt buckle ghost, where if you had a spirit that always had a belt buckle, that means it was the same entity. I do believe there probably is something called the Flannel Man. And there are attributes. They say it looks like a lumberjack. Looks like a lumberjack wearing this red flannel. They tend to be fairly tall. I don't think this is the Flannel Man. I think this is just the ghost in a flannel. Oh, to be honest though, I don't know what it is. It could be a ghost in a flannel shirt. It could be a body that is out there undiscovered, rotting in the water. The hands slick and wet, this bloated corpse. Could be an undiscovered body that someone died in the water a long time ago. And that's haunting this area. Which in this case would be your best option. The eyes in the mouth with the dark voids in them. And again, this is where I'm not trashing anyone else, because I really hope it doesn't come across that way. All of this is guesswork. All of this is guesswork, right? Paranormal research, we don't have a whole lot of framework to go on. Having the eyes and the mouth leading into nothingness, that does make me think. I mean, it could be a corpse of someone who had their eyeballs devoured by predators and out of their mouth, if something was eating their tongue out. It could totally be that. That makes it so inhuman that at the best case, it's a human ghost lost in the land of the living. In the worst case, it is a demon, and that's why it appears in such a vile form. And that would also account for it following the girls home. If Laura actually didn't have a nightmare, if that was a real occurrence, which again, we loop back around to the priest just being like, I was just a guy in a mask. That's when a young person comes to you with a spiritual fear, maybe he was just trying to make her feel good and say, no, it's just a guy in a mask. But I wonder if the priest knows more than they're letting on. To completely blow it off seems odd to me. I grew up not Catholic. I did go to Catholic school for 3 years. I went to a private Catholic school, but I grew up Southern Baptist, and there wasn't a spiritual answer to everything, but if it involved the paranormal, there was. That's what we would go back to try to figure out, what we needed to do. I'll put that episode in the show notes, the the encounters my family has had with paranormal events. But yeah, that's just kind of an odd point to me. But maybe I'm just grasping at conspiracy straws. It could just be a ghost, and the priest doesn't believe in ghosts, and the priest just thinks it's two girls being hysterical. But it could be something darker than that. I find it really interesting that only they saw it and nobody else was able to interact with it, or no one else in the store seemed to react. I find it very interesting. When I was first reading the narrative, I thought Michelle was going to get her sister. They were going to come back around and the guy was going to be gone. And then Michelle would always be wondering if what she saw was real or if she was losing her mind. The fact that she brought her sister over to see it and it was still there, again, confirms that there was something in that store. We just don't know what it is. We don't know if it's still there. We don't know if it followed them home. We don't know what its intent. We don't know what its intentions were. It could have just been a ghost that appeared for a brief moment in time. It could have been a real human. I thought about this too. It could have been a real human there, and the girls were seeing his true essence. It could have nothing to do with the paranormal. They could have actually been seeing a man who had committed such evil that under the right conditions, his human mask is completely gone. We kind of talked about that recently with the whole Jeffrey Dahmer being a shapeshifter thing. That's possible as well. So I could have all these different options here. It could be the lumberjack man or the flannel man. But whatever it was, these two girls saw something that they shouldn't have. They saw something that their brains weren't able to comprehend. Michelle seems to be doing a little bit better about it. She's able to post this online. But her sister can't even talk about this story. Her sister thinks just by speaking of it, it may invite him back into their lives. Her sister is deeply traumatized by this event. Was it a one-off encounter? And to be fair, we're only 6 years afterwards. If this entity, if this force is demonic, it doesn't have to act right away. It's not like, the last couple of years have been great. Maybe there was nothing there. If it's a demonic force, it could definitely bide its time. It could be waiting for just the right moment to re-enter the lives of these girls and devastate them. It's like a psychic landmine. We talk about this before on the show. We just flitter about our lives doing our thing, not realizing that all around us there could be these elements of chaos just hiding. Our brains aren't perceiving them. We don't know. But when we see one, we set it off. When we see it now may be able to see us. And just like stepping on a real landmine, which can kill you or change your life forever, so can stepping on one of these psychic landmines. You've now introduced a element of spiritual chaos into your existence. And when the people you're supposed to count on, when your spiritual leaders tell you that it's nothing, maybe they're right. But if they're wrong, they're not going to be the ones paying the price. All these girls wanted to do was buy some sodas and some snacks and spend the afternoon hanging out at their grandma's house. Instead, they may have introduced a demonic force into their lives. The man with the melting face, standing in a dark bedroom, watching a young girl sleep. Staring at them with soulless sockets. And an empty mouth full of infinite nothingness that hungers for sweet, young souls. deadrabbitradio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at facebook.com/deadrabbitradio. TikTok is @deadrabbitradio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today.